Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1830A, and today's date is April 1st, 2019, and the title of the episode is Countries Are Detaching Themselves from the Central Bank Financial System on Schedule. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we know the deep state, the central banks, they've been using the magic wand for a very long time. And what I'm talking about is the ability to manipulate the statistical numbers, the ability to manipulate the stock market, the ability to make the economy look fantastic. Trump, of course, is using the magical wand to make the economy look incredible. He's using all the weapons that the deep state, the central banks have been using in the past. He's using them against themselves. Now, we know there's one problem with this, is that yes, you can make the stock market go up. Yes, you can make unemployment look great. Yes, you can make GDP look fantastic. The only thing you can't do is make people spend money. If people do not feel good, they don't feel confident, and they don't have funds coming in where they feel, ooh, I have a little bit of extra money here, I can go out and spend it, they're not going to do it. You can give them credit cards. You can tell them that everything is fantastic. But if people don't have the money, they're not going to go out and spend it. Think about yourself. Think about your family. Think about what you do. You look at your budget and say, you know something? We just can't do it. We can't go out to eat. No, we can't purchase that product. And this is something the magic wand can't manipulate. And this is why it shows up in retail. And retail is struggling right now. Not just brick and mortar, but online. And we're going to be talking about that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about the Brexit. Now, the European Union, they've given the United Kingdom until April 12th to decide upon an alternative withdrawal arrangement. And they really want a second referendum. Why? Because they've used this in the past. This is exactly what they did in Ireland with the Treaty of Lisbon. They asked once, Ireland said no, but they kept on asking until they said yes. And what the deep state, what the central bankers like to do is whenever people vote or the people say we want something, they try to force the people into the opposite of what they really want. They use delays. They use fear-mongering, and they do whatever they possibly can to reverse the decision. And this is what we see happening out in the UK. And they're going to do everything they possibly can to shut down this Brexit. They knew their deal was no deal at all. They knew the people weren't going to go along with it. And they're going to fight this until the very end. Hopefully, the people stand up and say, you know what? Enough is enough. Here we are at the deadline. Boom. We're cutting ourselves off. We'll have to see how this plays out. But once again, we know how the central bank plays. We know how these non-elected leaders play. They don't like to give in. They don't like to lose, and they keep pushing. Well, guess what? The people have a louder voice. The people are stronger. It's time the people stand up to these individuals and finally shut them down and show them who is in control. And I believe this is what's going to happen out in the UK. Now, here in the United States, we understand that the economy is built on an illusion. Yes, we see the numbers with Trump. Yes, he's pushing the agenda. Remember, there are many different things happening all at once. The message that he's pushing out there is so he can win the next election. The message that he's pushing out there about the economy doing fantastically is that he's using the magical wand to prop up the stock market, manipulate the statistical numbers, GDP, unemployment, and the rest. And he needs to do this. He needs to create this narrative. Now, we talked about this narrative a long time ago, and he needs to control the narrative. And that's what he's doing. He's controlling the narrative, at the same time controlling the central bank, because he can only control so much of the economy. He can't control retail. The central bankers couldn't. The deep state, they couldn't. They couldn't make retail look better. This is why they started off saying, well, it was the weather. That's why retail wasn't doing well. And then during the sunny days and retail was still declining, well, it was the internet. The internet's taking over, and that's why retail's not doing well. Well, that didn't work either because the internet is only 10% of all retail sales. This is the problem they have. This is the problem Trump has. I hate to say it, but this is an indicator on how well the economy is doing. Remember, 70% of GDP is made up of people spending their money. Now, of course, to purchase a car, people can take out loans. To purchase a house, they can take out loans. Most of America, most of their credit cards are to the max. And if you are coming from a full-time job and you have a part-time job or two part-time jobs and you're not bringing in the funds, how do you purchase? You can't. And this is the problem we're seeing. If we look at the retail sales, they've dropped 0.2% month to month in February. And when you look at this, you can see that retail sales, they are not doing well. If you look at it year over year, they've slowed and the trajectory is down. And if you look at the specific numbers, you see that retail is not doing very well in many different sectors. Building materials and garden equipment plunged 4.4%. This is the biggest drop since 2012. Electronics, appliance stores, they fell by 1.3%. And when you start to look at this, you can see that people are not buying these items right now. If you look at the layoffs in stores, and we look at Challenger Grain Christmas, and we looked at this quite a bit during Obama's term, they're reporting that there are retail layoffs, and they are up by 92% in January and February compared to the same period a year ago. More than 41,000 people have lost their jobs in the retail industry so far this year. This is a 92% spike in layoffs. And the layoffs continue to mount. JCPenney is announcing this week it would be closing about 18 stores. And many people believe, well, it's because of the internet. The internet is now outpacing brick and mortar. The internet is more popular. More people are going to be purchasing on the internet, and brick and mortar is going to fall by the side. Well, not necessarily true. Yes, the internet is making huge gains, but there's a problem. The internet retailing has been growing, but it still accounts for less than 10% of all U.S. retail sales. In addition, it is important to point out that the internet retailers had a very disappointing holiday season, just like the brick and mortar retailers did. So everyone's not moving over to the internet area because you would see a 1-to-1 ratio. Like, oh, brick and mortar has gone down, the internet has gone up by the same amount, but we're not seeing that whatsoever. This tells you that the entire retail industry is slowing. And as this slows, it's going to show up that the economy is not doing well. Now, remember, Trump came into office and he came into an illusionary economy. He knew this before he came into office. But he didn't want to come out and say, hey, listen, the economy is an illusion. The whole stock market thing, fake, gigantic bubble. Housing, completely fake. Yes, it's a bubble. Yes, when he wasn't president, he did say those things. But when he came into office, what do you think would happen if he came out and said that day one? There'd be panic. People would say, wait a minute. And the whole thing would have collapsed right in front of us. So what they decided to do, they decided to use all the weapons the central bank and the deep state have been using for a very long time against them to prepare the United States for a brand new economy, an economy that will not include the private Western Central Bank. We will not borrow the currency. We will not have to pay this back because we, the people, will create this currency with no interest attached. And most likely it will be backed by sound money, most likely gold. Q has been hinting about this. But countries right now, they are quickly detaching themselves from the central bank system. And when you see countries moving away from the dollar, when you see countries moving away from the SWIFT system, when you see countries moving away from the U.S., it's not the U.S. itself. They're moving away from the private Western central bank system, their debt note, their system that they set up. And we can see there are countries that are doing this. Russia, China. We know that Russia and China, they've been dumping U.S. dollars and they've been buying gold. We know that many other countries have been doing the same thing. We know that Russia and China, they created their own payment systems. And Russia right now is clearly seeking to end monetary ties with the Federal Reserve dollar. They're going to be joining China's payment system, the China International Payment System, CIPS, also known as China's SWIFT. They're doing this to ease operations between the two countries. So what this means is they're going to detach themselves from the SWIFT payment system, which is run by what? The U.S. banking system, which is controlled by what? The central bank system, which is the Fed. We know the amount of debt here in the country, the amount of debt around the world cannot be sustained. This is a central bank system. Their system creates debt over time, and it cannot be sustained. And that's what we're seeing right now. This debt level cannot be sustained. It's completely impossible. I know people say, oh, no, it can be done. No, it can't. Try it in your own home. Put on as much debt as you possibly can, and your income doesn't increase. Let me know how long you can survive by doing this with all that interest attached to the money that you're borrowing. And of course, it's credit cards, or even take out a home equity line of credit. Let me know how that works out for you. I'm going to tell you right now, it will not. If you take this to the next level and you look at corporations, why do you think corporations go bankrupt? Because the debt level gets too heavy. It cannot be sustained. There's no difference with countries. I don't know why everyone thinks, oh, well, the country's different. We have a Federal Reserve. Guess what? Somebody still has to pay the debt back. Yes, they can keep interest rates at zero or close to zero. But eventually what happens, as more and more debt is put on, and you can see it's accelerating, the amount of people working, the amount of tax receipts coming in, it doesn't work anymore. It falls apart. Why do you think countries around the world are having problems? Those countries that are in a huge amount of debt, they can't make it. And eventually what they have to do is they have to default somehow, some way. And right in the beginning, what they do is they have austerity. They cut programs. They put people out of work. They do everything they possibly can to keep the system running, because this is what the central banks are telling them to do. But eventually what happens is the whole thing completely falls apart. And once they get them to a certain level, they start adding on debt once again, like there's no tomorrow. Remember, the central banks, they don't actually want the country to default. Why? Because if a country defaults, everyone points the finger at the central bank. They want them at that limbo state where the central bank has complete control over them. They're in enough debt where the central bank can dictate to the country on what they need to do. And it allows them to buy up the assets, pennies on the dollar. So they don't actually want countries to default, because they rather have countries making the minimum payment and have control over them, because they don't want to bring attention to what they've done if they actually collapse a system. So Trump right now, he's running against the clock. Yes, he has the magic wand. Yes, he's pushing the economy to the max. He's going to be using a huge amount of funds to rebuild the infrastructure, to get rid of regulations, to make better trade deals, to build up the armed forces. Because I believe later on what's going to happen, through an audit, through what they find, they're going to find out that the Federal Reserve has not been following their mandate. The Federal Reserve has been involved in criminal activity. The Federal Reserve has been doing many things behind the scenes that the people weren't aware of. And at that point, that's when Trump can say, you know something? we're not paying this back. Sorry. And all of a sudden, the central bank is removed. It is taken over. And now the people control the currency. And yes, we're going to go through this transition. It's going to be a little rough in the beginning. They're going to try to smooth it out as best they can, but it will be a little rough. And this is why I continually say, get prepared. Get prepared with food and water. Because if credit freezes up, if things don't go well, you want to be prepared for this. You don't want to be running to the market. You want to have gold, silver to protect your wealth. The same thing that we've been talking about has not changed. The only difference is that Trump patriots are in control. They're going to try to make this as easy as possible. Compared to what the central banks would have done, they would have just crashed the system, have people riot, have people suffer, and have the people beg the central bank, the deep state, to take care of them. This time, since Trump and the patriots are in control, we're not going to beg for the government to take control, to take care of us. They're going to say, listen, we're going to get rid of the central bank because they weren't working for the people. And we're going to take care of ourselves by going on the gold standard. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.